Welcome, everybody. My name is Jill Jonathan. I'm with Red, Wine, and Blue. We're a community of women who use digital media and friend-to-friend organizing to change the world one suburb at a time. And I'm joined with Joe Carducci, my co-host, and we will be talking to Christina Reynolds from Emily's List. So welcome. Thank you for joining. And Christina, let's just take it to you. Could you just start off by telling us a little bit about Emily's List and what you all do there?
Thank you for having me. I'm glad your dog is so excited. Mine are napping, but we may hear from them later. So Emily's List is an organization that's been around for about 40 years. We were created at a time when no Democratic woman had been elected to the U.S. Senate of her own right. And our founder, Ellen Malcolm, decided that that was enough. And she watched as women would come very close, but not have enough money to be taken seriously. And then that would result in them not being able to raise more money. And it was a vicious cycle. And so she gathered 25 of her friends in her basement and said, we're going to write checks to, at the time, Barbara Mikulski, who was running for the Senate in Maryland. And they wrote, $25 checks, and then they asked all their friends to do the same, and they bundled money for Barbara Mikulski, who got elected. And we have continued to grow since then. So now we are in races up and down the ballot. Our aim is to elect Democratic pro-choice women. We work in everything from mayor's races and state legislatures all the way up to we have been a proud supporter of Vice President Kamala Harris since her first run as a district attorney in San Francisco. And so our work is to make sure that government looks more like us, because we know that our tagline is run, win, change the world, because we know that when women run and when they win, they get in office and they make life better for all of us. They do, in fact, change the world. And we're so proud of the women that we've supported and the work that they do. And there couldn't be a more critical time than right now in what we're facing with the fall of Roe.
Yeah, and so let's just touch on that a little bit, because on Monday, it was the 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade. And I'm not sure any of us really expected that it would be gone after 50 years. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I worked for Hillary Clinton, and it was very interesting because we used to tell people Donald Trump says he wants to overturn Roe v. Wade, and they would, to a person, say, well, that would be really bad, but I don't think he can do it. And what we saw up until that point was that abortion was an incredibly important issue to people. America is a pro-choice country. Whether or not you would want to have an abortion yourself, you believe this is a decision that people should be able to make themselves. It's just that simple. And we knew that was true, but people didn't really vote on it because they thought the protections of Roe were there. And they didn't think that we had watched in some states where Republicans were trying to go further. They were making it harder and harder to access abortion, where you had the right, but not the access or the ability to get one. But Donald Trump was true to his word. And what he did, as we all know, was fill 3 Supreme Court seats with people who were committed to doing the same thing he was. And they got the right case to move up through the courts. And with the Dobbs decision, they overturned Roe v. Wade and sent it back to the states to be decided. And so what that meant in some states was that if there was a pre-Roe v. Wade ban, so a ban on the books before 1973, some of those went into effect. In some states where we have phenomenal women that Emily's List has been proud to support, like in Michigan, we had, Gretchen Whitmer and the amazing legislators there, and all, the government. We have a ton of women in government in Michigan. We love Michigan, but those elected officials working with people on the ground who did a ballot initiative. We're trying to make sure that pre-Roe ban didn't go in place. We've seen that around the country. We've also seen, unfortunately, Republicans move in the other direction. So we've seen Ron DeSantis sign a 6-week ban in Florida, which is effectively a full abortion ban. We've seen there are legislators around the country that are trying to pass bans that say you can't travel out of state to get an abortion. So we're not just going to limit what you can do in our state. We're going to say if that's what you want to do, you can't leave the state. And so that's part of why Emily's List exists, is to make sure, because the reality is who you elect determines your rights. It's a sad state of affairs, but that's where we are. And so what we have found is that in states where we can elect pro-choice Democrats, and I would argue especially pro-choice Democratic women, because we love them, but where we can elect those folks, then we can protect our rights. So in states like New Mexico, in states like Colorado, in Michigan and Minnesota, where they flipped the legislature and have a Democratic governor, they have done work to protect our rights, to expand access. In other states, I live in North Carolina, and I'm sad to say, because one Democratic legislator flipped seats, thereby giving them back a supermajority, Republicans were able to pass an abortion ban over Roy Cooper's veto. And that's something that we're looking at, unfortunately, because I know we're all tired, but every race matters, every seat matters, and we've got to fight for all of those.
So I appreciate so much of your work and for decades. I was foolish enough to have believed that, they would never actually overturn Roe. I'm one of those people who could admit when I was wrong.
Not alone. You were in the majority of people there.
Right. And what we've seen to this date is actually shocking. I mean, there's a new story, a statistic out yesterday, that there have been more than 64,000 pregnancies from rape since the fall of Roe. A lot of those in Texas. But we've seen sort of this sustained upticking in these red states in particular, in stripping women of even more nuanced rights related to repro, about, EMTALA and whether or not the hospital is required to give them life-saving abortion care if they're coming in with some kind of life-threatening, disorder or disease. I want to talk about, what do we do in these red states? How is Emily's List making inroads there? How can we help you make inroads there? What can people in the states do?
Yep. So I think it's critical, and we need to talk about the red states because they are the crisis situation. But I want to come back to the blue states, because by the way, some of the Supreme Court decisions that are coming, like on mifepristone, and a federal abortion ban could be coming, and that could mean your blue state is not safe, right? But let's talk about the red states. I think what we need to recognize is that every seat is worth fighting for. And it's something that, too often we say, and, look, we all of us, particularly those of us who work in progressive politics, but, there are limited resources. We have to pick and choose where we make our fights. For all of us at home, please do not look at it and say, I live in a red state, it can never be fixed. Because I want to point you to Kentucky, where we reelected a Democratic governor who ran on abortion rights. He literally ran ads saying, I will let you make that decision, right? That's what they ran on. And so, and we have seen that every time abortion is on the ballot, and this is one thing that we can do, and I will say Emily's List doesn't do this work, but look in your states and see if this is possible. It's not easy to get a ballot initiative on the ballot, and in some states it's just impossible. But in states where we've seen abortion literally on the ballot in a ballot initiative, we are 8 for 8. And that includes states for the pro-choice side, right? That includes states like Kansas, like Montana, like Kentucky. These are not states that we think of as bright blue liberal states, right? And yet people still support their rights. So I would say, number one, let's make sure that we are paying attention to, can we get something on the ballot? Is there an effort? If so, go sign up, go help out. Number two, should you be running should you think about running? If you're watching this, you're engaged in this issue, you care about this issue, should you think about running for office? Because I'm going to tell you that since the Dobbs decision, we have seen people flip seats that we might not have thought were possible. In Florida, there's a mayor, and Florida just had one of the first special elections I think it was the first special election of the year, and it was a seat that flipped red to blue. And, there's certainly a very strong argument in Florida that part of that was people didn't like that DeSantis ban, right? We need to get legislators who won't vote for that sort of thing. So one is making sure that we're making an effort everywhere. It's taking a look at all of those seats. And again, I hate to put work on people because I know we're all tired. There's a lot going on. But take a look at all of the seats. Emily's List in 2022 is proud to stand with a woman named Rochelle Garza, who ran for Attorney General. Rochelle sadly did not win, but in Texas. But I will tell you that we're proud to stand with her, and I hope that she'll run again at some point, because Rochelle was an ACLU attorney with when a juvenile in custody who had come over the border, needed an abortion. Rochelle stood with her and helped care for the young woman. Her opponent, and the man who is now Texas's Attorney General, is Ken Paxton, and he is the man who, make that face all day. He is well deserving of that face. If you've not paid attention to the Kate Cox case, this is the man who decided he knew better than her doctors. He knew better than everyone, that she should not be allowed to have an abortion, even though it was going to cost her fertility and potentially more. And that's something. So look at those races, because you can elect a Democrat statewide in red states. If we all stand up and demand that they talk about these issues, one thing that we're seeing a lot of is Republicans don't talk about abortion very much. They can read a poll. They know it's unpopular. They know people are actually voting on it. And so they're trying to pretend, no, it's all fine, right? That's not what they're doing in office, but that's how they're campaigning. And so the final thing I will say is vote. We have to vote in every election, in every primary, in every, we got to get out there and show them that this issue matters.
And so, Christina, can you talk a little bit about what kind of positions people can run for? Because we talk a lot about, vote up and down the ballot and pay attention to those local elections. So if somebody's like, I think I want to get involved, or pay attention who's running for these positions.
Yes. And thank you all for doing that, because it is important up and down the ballot. I think, right now, state legislatures are incredibly important in terms of the laws that we're passing. I think beyond, I don't say just reproductive rights, but beyond reproductive rights, your state legislature has a major impact in your life. You just may not see it, right? But state legislatures are something that we should definitely be paying more attention to. And there are seats that go uncontested, and so I will tell you, a lot of the women that we work with who are in state office and federal office, all the way up, don't win their first election. So sometimes you run in that tough seat and then keep running, right? Keep trying. You meet more people, you get out there. So state legislatures are important, but also, city councils are important, right? Mayors are important. Obviously, not the issue we're talking about today, but I know you all have been vocal on it. School boards are incredibly important, right? As we see them banning books of history, things like that. So, keep an eye and look at all of those. There are resources up there. I know at Emily's List, we have a training center on our website that actually has worksheets you can fill out and documents and things like that to help you understand. I think a lot of times we have this idea that there's some secret playbook, right? That, I don't know how to do this, but those people do, right? No, they don't. They're making it up as they go along too. And so the resources are out there. if you want to run. If you don't want to run, and I get it, I will never run for office, but I love being able to support people at every level of office who I know are going to do great work. And so find someone you know and encourage them to run, or get involved and see at Emily's List, we make endorsements on an ongoing basis and are still going through them, but they're on our website. You can see many groups put their endorsements on their website, and it's a great resource. Find groups that you know and trust, and take a look at your local party. Get involved there. There are a ton of ways to get involved. I would encourage you to do it. You'd be surprised. I think people think they have to be an expert in politics. There are no experts in politics. There are people who want to make their community better. That is the one thing you need. And if you have that, then you're ready to go. Then you can do the work and make a change.
I want to pick up on that, actually, because what would you say, to someone who said, I was in education, and, I've always sort of toyed with the idea of running, but it's so scary. It's so intimidating. Like, I don't know all the ins and outs of all these issues. And, I don't think I can do it. Like, what's the way to kind of maybe encourage them along?
Yes. So we hear this a lot from women. I think it will surprise very few people that you don't hear it as much from men. At Emily's List, we don't, we don't run the race. So, but we hear it from women. And the other thing that we hear from women is this desire to be completely prepared before they run. Right. Mm-hmm. And what what we say is, like, there's no such thing as completely prepared, right? No one knows every issue, and that's all the way up the ballot. I had the pleasure of working for President Obama. I worked for Hillary Clinton. Those are two incredibly brilliant folks, and they did their homework, right? They didn't walk into the office knowing everything. They did the work as they went along. So what I would say is, your lived experience is an important thing that you're bringing in. You mentioned, for example, someone in education. We need more educators in office, right? We need more people who actually understand how education works. I would argue we need more doctors. We need more caregivers. We need more social workers. Our system was built for wealthy landowners, and then that's kind of who we've protected, right? And it's time for us to shake that up. And we've seen a lot of good progress, but we need more of that. If you're an educator, I'm sorry, but yes, it's scary to run for office, but if you've stood in front of a class of, I don't know, teenagers, you can do this, right? That's scary too, and you did it. And so we all face things that are scary. What I would say is, again, if you want to run for office, you need to understand that it's going to be hard work. You need to understand, that it's going to take a lot of time, but fundamentally, you just need to know, what do you want to change? What do you want to do? What are you running for? And I think if you have that passion, then you can, and you're someone who's willing to work hard, you can find the rest of the things. There are, like I said, there are resources out there. At Emily's List, we have a training center online. We've got, there are a variety of groups that offer a variety of resources. There are some that do different trainings and things like that. We partner with groups to do some of those. So I would say, just, yeah, it's scary. Life is scary, right? A lot of things that we do every day are scary. And so the idea of committing to support your community and to make something better is something that, is no more scary than what you do every day. And so I think, and you've learned how to do things all the time. One of the best stories that I know is, there's a woman named Lauren Underwood. She's the youngest Black woman to ever get elected to Congress, and she's still in her 30s, which makes me a little depressed sometimes. But Lauren had trained as a nurse. She was born with a cardiac condition that was a chronic condition, and so trouble with health insurance pre-Obamacare. She trained as a nurse, and she went into healthcare policy and actually worked in implementing Obamacare and helping people understand that. That feels like someone I would like to see in Congress, right? We don't have enough people who understand healthcare policy. Lauren had never thought about running for office, and after Trump won, and she knew that he wanted to get rid of Obamacare, she went to a town hall that her member of Congress did, and she raised her hand and she said, "I have a pre-existing condition. I just want to make sure you will always protect pre-existing conditions. And he said he would. And then he went and voted the exact other way. And so she said, okay, I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to be brave and I'm going to go and do the hard thing and I'm going to take his seat. And she did. And in Congress, she brings up things like she has sponsored the Momnibus, which is her bill to protect Black maternal health. Been a huge part of helping expand and helping figure out how can Medicare and Medicaid deal better with some of the actual issues that people face. She's obviously been a huge advocate for reproductive freedom. And what it took was her saying, I need more people like me protecting people like me, right? So that's something we can all do.
Yeah, it makes me think of like when people think, oh, somebody should do something about that. And then
Yes.
when they realize, oh,
Oh,
I guess I'm that somebody. I could do something about that. And I mean, and that's what, Emily's List and Red, Wine, and Blue, like we're the resource. We're here to help you with different things. So I just want to switch gears just a
sure.
little bit about this 2024 election coming
Yes.
up. And we've talked about local elections, but we have to talk about the big election. And
Yes.
what is the Biden-Harris campaign doing to protect reproductive rights?
Yeah, first and foremost, they are doing a lot in the White House. They are using the levers that they can to make sure, for example, if you're in the military, can you actually get abortion care where you need it? Like there are people in the military stationed in Texas, things like that. There's all the, in the miles and miles of red tape that govern our federal government. They are finding the little places where they can to make abortion access better. And I am grateful to see it. And it's why it matters who's in that office. The other thing is, as Joe Biden noted the other day, and Kamala Harris talks about all the time, they will never sign a federal abortion ban. Let's talk about what a federal abortion ban means. What it means is if they get a majority in Congress and they've got the White House, they can sign a bill that does the opposite of Roe, right? That says you cannot protect abortion rights in your state. So if you live in Michigan, Minnesota, one of these places where it's been protected, or you live in a state like New York or California, and you're not worried about it, everything's great, right? It's the whole state's run by pro-choice folks. It won't matter because a federal abortion ban will supersede that. And so it is critical that we keep the White House. It is critical that we keep people in office who understand this right. And I will say, I think what the entire administration has done has been terrific. I am, personally, because of what I do, I focus a lot more on the vice president. And what I can tell you is she is a powerful advocate and has been for years throughout her career for reproductive rights. And she's out there. She's on a reproductive rights tour right now. She, last year she did a tour of colleges, and it was a variety of colleges, right? Some HBCUs, some community colleges, talking about rights in general. Now she's really drilling down on reproductive rights. That's an important moment for a few reasons. One, abortion is going to help decide this election. There are people who might not come out for the election, but are driven out by this issue. Young people in particular, someone we're looking at. As we know, young people think of things in less partisan ways. They're more focused on specific issues than sort of following the party. This is an issue they care about. And it's one that the vice president is a particularly effective messenger with. And so I think you'll see her out there a lot. Women, and particularly, as you all know, suburban women. We've got independents out there. We've got people who are either too busy or too turned off by, again, been a long time, right? We're all tired. We had Trump. That was a lot. We had COVID. That was a lot. Now we're looking at an election that looks to be the same as the last one, where, reminder, we were all in COVID, and that's not something we all want to, harken back to. And so we are so excited about the idea of them being able to get out into the country and talk about this issue, because it is one that appeals to the voters we're going to need to turn out, and she especially does. So I think it's so critical that we keep the White House for a wide variety of reasons. And I know people vote on a wide variety of reasons, but when we talk about abortion in particular, if we lose the White House, there are many, many things that the president can do. They can undo all the good that the Biden-Harris administration have done, but also, there's a reason that all the anti-choice groups are okay with Trump, even though he's acting like he's wishy-washy on a federal abortion ban. I mean, spoiler alert, he will sign a federal abortion ban. Right.
Yeah.
He can read a poll. So he's, kind of hemming and hawing, but at the same events, he'll say, I am so proud to have overturned Roe. Right. So he will sign one. But even if he tries to convince people he won't, he has talked to those groups. He has told them all the stuff, and they have a plan for him that is a, several 100-page document of here are the ways that you can impact reproductive freedom. And again, spoiler alert, that is not impact in the positive way, right? That is limit. That is end. And so that's the sort of thing that we're keeping an eye on, and why, one of the, I know it's a long list, but one of the many reasons why we can't have him win.
Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting things about this particular issue is something that you talk about at Emily's List a lot, which isn't just that you want to elect pro-choice candidates, but that those pro-choice candidates are reflective of the constituency. It's actually, this is where the people are. And so it's much more sellable in that way to a wider swath of the American populace than the alternative. And I feel like going back to the ballot measures that you brought up, that's where we can really look to, states like Ohio, as we've all been intimately familiar with. They're really great indicators for the fact that more Americans are pro-choice and believe in reproductive freedom than don't.
Yes. And it's very funny, because you have this sort of, the pundits sometimes will try and say, well, you should compromise, right? And it's like, nobody's asking you to compromise on your rights. Right. So, but more importantly, this is not a question of how many weeks. This is not a question of which exceptions, although I can give you all the reasons why the exceptions aren't real, right? They will find loopholes to ignore the exceptions. This is a question of who gets to decide. My old boss used to say, it's, do you want Ted Cruz in your doctor's office or not? And I want you to have that picture in your head. Well, and you go to the doctor, and you will never not vote again. No. But it's important, right? Like, that's the truth. It's who should get to decide. Is it you, or is it a bunch of old judges in Texas? Is it you, or is it Ted Cruz? Is it you, or is it anyone in government, right? Like, who gets to decide? Do you add to your family? Do you start a family? Do you, what are you doing with regard to your future and your healthcare and your body? And fundamentally, that's the question. And we do a serious disservice when we, I think what happens, truth be told, is the pundits and the Republicans have done a serious disservice by underestimating voters' ability to understand that. They think that voters want moderation, blah, blah, blah. No, they don't. I mean, maybe they do, but voters for themselves, but voters look at Kate Cox from Texas. Voters look at, Brittany Watts in Ohio, right? They look at these stories and they say, yeah, this is why it's better. And, this is why, whether I will ever have an abortion, maybe I will, maybe I won't, maybe I've decided that's not for me. That is not a decision that I get to make for other people. And that fundamentally, we are in the high 70s, 80s range, right? Like, that's where Americans are. And when you look at demographics, it goes across the board. People try and argue, oh, it's not true for this demographic or that demographic. Nope. You don't get those numbers without getting a majority of people, including, most independents and an awful lot of Republicans. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we try and remind people. It's also why we all need to be vigilant, because they are going to try and lie to us about their positions, right? They're going to look at it and say, oh, yeah, I'm good. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not one of them, whatever. Every single one of them, every single Republican in the House voted for Mike Johnson to be Speaker. And if you don't know much about Mike Johnson, here's what I can tell you. This year, he signed on to a bill called the Life at Conception Act. Life at Conception is a bill aimed at ending abortion, right? It says no abortions because, your life, that's what he signed on to this year. That's it. Like, last year, but I'm pretty sure he'll sign on again. He spoke at the March for Life last week. They all elected this guy as Speaker of the House. That's who's in charge. This is also the man, go down a rabbit hole, you'll see lots of weird stuff. But that's who they've put in charge of their party. They're all, climbing over themselves to endorse Donald Trump again, now that he's clear he's the nominee. They know who runs their party. They have made it that way. And so don't believe them if they try and tell you, no, I'm fine on abortion. It's okay. Because you are absolutely right. Poll after poll. And what happened with the polls was polls for decades, polls have told us Americans support this right, but they didn't vote on it because they didn't believe that it could be overturned.
That's right.
And what happened was literally overnight. I talk to pollsters all the time who say they've never seen a shift like this. Once the Dobbs decision came down, people were aware of it. They knew what it meant, and suddenly they were voting on it.
Like, it is so much, and we have to keep talking about it.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, Christina, can you just share some things that Emily's List is really focused on this year to get people to run and get people at the polls, really?
Yes. So we are very focused on, like I said, if you got to pay attention to all the offices, we are very focused on obviously reelecting Vice President Harris and her running mate. But, we are very focused on protecting the Senate. If you are interested, we've got a tough seats. I know for those of you in Ohio, he's not one of ours, but we got to protect Sherrod Brown, right? But we have a number of important seats there, and flipping the House, which is very doable. But we got to do the work, right? And then looking at legislatures where we think we can either protect a slim majority and keep protecting that right, or break a super majority on the other side. Those are some of our top priorities. Here's what I would say. I think get involved, make sure that you are sharing the information. If a Republican tries to weasel out of their position, call them out on it.
Mm-hmm.
Please make sure we're sharing that. Please make sure we're sharing positive content. We know that matters. So share when we see, one of our candidates go out and talk about abortion, talk about why this issue matters. If you can throw in a few bucks to a candidate you like or a group like Emily's List, that's also important. One of the things that we want to make sure is that we have this issue in front of voters, that they know it hasn't gone away, and we know what Trump is going to do. He's going to try and convince people that he is moderate. And so we are going to have to work overtime to get in front of them his real record. So all those things, emilyslist.org is our website. I hope you'll check us out and just let's keep this issue out there. Let's call it out.
Yeah, exactly. Joe, do you have anything to add?
I can't hear Jill, full disclosure. So Ashley's been texting me her question. So I think Jill just said, Joe, do you have anything to add or something like that? Because I didn't think I was, maybe she said, do you want keys with that? I'm not sure. But if she was asking if I had anything to add, no, I am so grateful that for you, for Emily's List. And I totally agree with you that personally speaking, this was not an issue that I thought I really needed to engage on, because I really did think I was safe. And now I'm the mother of a 10-year-old girl who has fewer rights than I did at her age. And this is top of mind. And so we have to keep putting it out there. We have to keep talking about it. And we know, to your point, they don't want to talk about a federal ban out loud. But you got Youngkin saying to people quietly and at these prayer breakfasts and stuff, their real agendas. And so we keep calling them out, keep exposing them, keep electing pro-choice leaders who reflect our will. And I'm just, my last two things are just to say that, and to say thank you so much. And whatever we can do to help, I sign me up.
Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for talking about this issue, and thank you for the work that you all do. It's been really great to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. This will be saved on our YouTube channel. So there'll be a link there that you can watch later or share with other people. And like Christina and Joe said, this is something that we just have to talk about all the time. We cannot let it rest. So thanks for joining. And Red, Wine, and Blue is here for you. Emily's List is here for you. You're not alone. So that's all I have to say. Bye.
Bye.